good afternoon. My name is Donna Fiesel, and I'm your host of The Edge on IC Radio, your source for news and entertainment. You can also find us on television, channel 182 on Charter Communications and Abundance Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Don't forget the podcast, netnewsnetwork.net. I found something on a website, and I'm all about history. You know, what did people do back then? What did they do as a pastime? You didn't have television, didn't have internet, no Facebook, none of that stuff going on back in the day. And then you think, well, what kind of foods did they eat? Were they like what we ate? I mean, you couldn't go jump in the car and go to Chick-fil-A or any of that stuff. So their food was just a little different. And remember, they didn't have the refrigeration we have now. And although they did know how to prepare foods and they knew how to can, they knew how to preserve foods. But I ran across this article right here. And it says 15 gross foods people actually ate in the 18th century. They ate this stuff, yeah, and probably looking back years from now, decades, if the world is still standing, our kids, great grandkids, all those kids are going to go, they ate that. It's just that comes with the territory. So colonial America, let's talk about that for a few minutes, was known for its quaint tea and for those little ginger cakes and pudding, but there are a lot of surprise dishes out there that bordered on exotic taste. At least back then. It was an adventure to the taste buds, apparently. And even if some of them may have seemed a little bit revolting to you, it was a different time, and the early Americans enjoyed these delicacies. Social status, class, taste, and personal preference played into the dishes prepared in colonial America. You may be surprised to find that some of these foods are still around. Let's go ahead and look at one right here. Okay, this right here is called Scrabble. Scrabble, you may ask? Okay, so what in the world is in Scrabble? That actually looks like banana bread or something like that, doesn't it? But actually it consists of scraps of pork cooked with cornmeal to form a loaf. That doesn't seem that bad to me. Parts of the meat that were usually thrown, oh, okay, I get it. Parts of the meat that were usually thrown away, like the heart and the liver, were used in this dish. It does seem a little gross now. Some Amish and Mennonite communities still eat Scrabble. It's usually found in the Pennsylvania Dutch country and in some of the mid-Atlantic countries. Okay, now there was something else they had called posset, P-O-S-S-E-T. Okay, posset was made from cream, eggs, and flour, making it rich and creamy, and it was a popular dessert in the 18th century. They added ale, which turns into being a drinkable custard. Now, since the ale curdled the cream, that's why it was called a drinkable custard. So posset was a drink served at weddings. Could even be served in specialty pots. I wonder if it was anything. Okay, so it's kind of like a custard, but it's kind of like a creamy, runny custard. I don't know about that. What do you think? Okay, let's talk about the next one. Okay, so this one, see that pigeon up there? Looks like a pigeon. I don't see a pigeon anywhere. That looks like lobster to me. Oh well, maybe the pigeon is somewhere else. Pigeon apparently was a delicacy. So the wealthier colonial Americans in the 17th and 18th centuries had pigeons for dinner. We talked about that in one of the other shows. So pigeons were a delicacy for the upper class, and they expected the birds to be prepared with the utmost care and flair. Simple pigeon pies were also prepared and consumed by those who weren't as wealthy. So there you go. Pigeon was a delicacy back in the day. English ketchup, and they spelled it K-A-T-C-H-U-P. So the colonial Americans had catch-up, K-A-T-C-H-U-P, but it's different from what we know today. Theirs was not even tomato-based. It was an Asian-inspired sauce. It was made from mushrooms, walnuts, oysters, and anchovies. Now, there was one recipe from colonial Williamsburg that called for a combination of vinegar, white wine, cloves, ginger, anchovies, horseradish, and nutmeg. So colonial Americans would use the sauce for meat or for fish. Now, if it was called K-A-T-C-H-U-P, it was called that. So, okay, did they put it on their fries, or did they even have fries back in those days? Possible that they did. So that was English catch up. Okay, this is the one we saw just a minute ago. Well, that was the pigeons. Okay, so take a look at this one right here. Okay, lobster for everyone? Now, that's a pretty expensive meal right here. Okay, so we often see lobster as an expensive meal, often enjoyed by the wealthy, but it was different back then for the early Americans. Seafood was common for British North American colonies who held on to the Atlantic seaboard, making seafood common. So lobster was pretty common. It was even associated with the lower classes. Can you imagine that? So lobsters were super cheap back then. And they were actually fed to slaves and to prisoners. They're actually what we consider now eating high off the hog. Okay, so number 6 right here is something called clabber. C-L-A-B-B-E-R. Okay, so clabber was a form of yogurt. Okay, and it was made from soured curdled milk done in an era before refrigeration. And it did taste strong and sour, so men and women of the area added toppings like cinnamon, nutmeg, or pepper just to add flavor. So clabber, like many American foods, arrived with the Scottish Irish in the 18th century. So let's talk about that just for a second. So number 6 was clabber. You know, I've told you how you can clabber milk. My grandmother used to call it clabbering milk. So what they would do to make buttermilk. So let's say you were out of buttermilk and you wanted to make buttermilk biscuits. See, here's what they would do. They would get milk, and we've done this on a couple of episodes, by the way. So they would put sweet milk. My grandmother always called it sweet milk. So they put sweet milk in a cup, and then she would add either vinegar or she would add lemon juice, and it would make it thick, and it would turn it into buttermilk. And sometimes I do that if I happen to be out of buttermilk and Phil wants a buttermilk biscuit for breakfast, he gets his buttermilk biscuit. So all of those things are kind of came with the territory. Now there's something else, turtle soup. So they had a lot of turtle soup back in those days, and this was actually for the wealthy households of the 18th century. They were wealthy, and they enjoyed trendy turtle soup and often had a recipe ready. Now, the imperial trade gave wealthy families access to turtles from the colonies. This was especially in Virginia and in Maryland, where there were a lot of turtles. We have a lot of turtles here on the pond. The turtles would be cooked with wine and butter, turning it into a rich, decadent dish. What do you think about that? Seems pretty awesome. You know something else they had, and it was called stewed swan. Let's see if I can find that. There it is. It's called stewed swan. So colonial men and women enjoyed swan as a specialty meat. I just haven't thought about eating swan. You just think of those beautiful swans in the water, you know, graceful looking like that one right there. And while that would be an outrage nowadays, having a bird stewed was no big deal back then. The colonists actually copied the dish from England. I don't know that I could eat a swan. It's just so pretty. But then you got to think about some of the other crazy things we eat. Okay, now something else they had was called applejack. And applejack, let's see how they made that. The settlers from England actually brought apples to America, making the fruit a food staple for the colonists. So they came up with an applejack by freezing hard cider, using freeze distillation, to jack up the alcohol content. So applejack was roughly 30% alcohol. Oh my goodness. Which made it a pretty potent drink for the colonists. Okay, that explains a lot of stuff. Maybe that's why they were able to eat some of this food. Okay, now there's another one that's called pepper cake. Let's see if I can find that for you right there. So Martha Washington's pepper cake actually is a recipe from her cookbook. So it was a book of cookery, and here's, if you're looking it up, I think you can find the PDF form of this. So look up on your whatever web search site you use, go to Book of Cookery, and they spell book B-O-O-K-E, of cookery, C-O-O-K-E-R-Y. Otherwise you won't find this particular recipe. So look for Martha Washington's pepper cake. India Spice had hostesses showing off their social status using pepper with sweet ingredients like molasses for cakes. It's also been said that they last for a quarter to a half a year. I mean, if it tastes good, it wouldn't be around that long, is what I'm trying to say. Martha Washington, like others in the 18th century, used pepper for recipes that were for sweet, dessert-like concoctions. I think I'm going to look for that. And so on one of the shows that we have coming up in the future, I'm going to make a pepper cake. And we're just going to see. We'll try it out on Phil first to see if he likes it. Okay, what do you think of eel? Yeah, you heard me correct. So colonial Americans used lobster as bait in eel tracks. Not so sure about that one either. They were crazy about eel, which could be eaten different ways. Now, eel pie was a popular recipe, with one recipe even going back to the 17th century. Eel pie. I think I'll probably pass on that one too. Now, there was another one, and I'd like to have your intake on this one right here. Okay, so this is called oyster ice cream. Yes, you heard me correctly on this one too. Oyster ice cream. So ice cream had become a go-to dessert for the second half of the 18th century. Now, they didn't have our popular modern freezers back in the day, and so what happened is they used massive ice house with enough people to keep large chunks of frozen water around to maintain the temperature. So Thomas Jefferson and all the Washingtons all loved ice cream. And so many others prepared ice cream flavored with oysters. Dolly Madison herself used oysters for her own recipe. Well, there you go. Let's go into a commercial break. We're going to be right back in just a minute.
At Lamone's Mexican Restaurant, located in Henniger, Alabama, and voted Best Mexican Restaurant of DeKalb County, Alabama 2020, we're here to serve you with authentic Mexican cuisine. Order easily online by going to lamonsmex.com or call 256-657-3999 to place your order. We're open Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Whether you're celebrating a cozy date night for two or a celebration for a crowd, at Lamone's you'll love our atmosphere and friendly servers. Thank you for dining with Lamone's Mexican Restaurant. Let Rhonda at Rhonda's Elite Tax LLC take the burden off you for all your tax needs. I know because Rhonda has been taking care of my business since 2013. I feel Rhonda works for me because she knows the direct questions to ask to better benefit my unique business in order for me to get back the biggest refund possible. Rhonda is an ongoing student, and she knows tax laws are in a constant change every year. Call 256-281-9903 for an appointment to take the dread out of getting your taxes done. Rhonda is located at 11968 U.S. Highway 431 in Boaz. Again, that number is 256-281-9903. And let Rhonda's Elite Tax LLC champion your personal and business taxes. Jeff McCurdy of the McCurdy Law Firm has been a public service of this area for over 10 years. McCurdy, a member of the Henniger City Council, serves as prosecutor for the town of Sylvania and was named public defender for the city of Rainsville. The McCurdy Law Firm is located at 17326 Alabama Highway 75 in Henniger to better represent his Jackson and DeKalb County clients. If you need to be represented by a true public servant with proven success, call Jeff at 256-996-8701 or send a private email to mccurdylawfirm@gmail.com. No representation is made that the legal services performed is greater than the legal services performed by other lawyers. At Liberty Bank, we're all about community, whether it's to help with a charity fundraiser or help families in need. Toys at Christmas or a local football team, we're here for you. You see, we realize the importance of family. Sometimes it's to build a new home or necessary home repairs. We're here for you. If you like the feel of a small town bank with all the conveniences of a big city bank, we're here to serve you. You will find us at any of our convenient locations in DeKalb, Marshall, Etowah, and Blount counties in North Alabama. You can call and speak with any of our friendly staff at 256-659-2175 or check us out on the web at libertybankal.com. And thank you for your support of our community. Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender.
Are you ready?
We all wonder what tomorrow will bring, but the future lays itself at the feet of the prepared and surrenders to the will of the persistent. It's not easy, but today shapes you so you can shape tomorrow. With Northeast Alabama Community College, when the future asks if you're ready, you can answer.
Yes.
Begin your future at Northeast Alabama Community College.
Okay, we are back.
The only place I buy my beef is Lone Tree Ranch in Collinsville, Alabama. Their cattle is born and raised on their ranch, grass and grain fed, and you can feel confident when you serve your family and friends because their beef is all natural and no antibiotics or hormones are added. You can buy whole beef or perhaps go in with family or friends and buy half. Their customer service is number one as they take care of the delivery to their local processor and can deliver to your home for a small added fee. They also offer herd replacement heifers. I always call Lone Tree Ranch in Collinsville, Alabama for my beef specialty recipes and cookouts, and you can too. Food shortages are increasing, so buy local by calling 256-523-6462. That's 256-523-6462.
My name is Donna Thiesel, and I'm your host of The Edge on ISC Radio, your source for news and entertainment. You can also find us on television, channel 182 on Charter Communications, as well as Abundant Television, which is found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Talking about weird foods and stuff like that. And check out the podcast, by the way, netnewsnetwork.net. Make sure you check it out. So we're talking about foods that were popular during the colonial days, and we might find a little bit on the strange side. They have one now. Everybody loves chocolate. Well, almost. I've met a few people who were not like true Americans or true people who did not like chocolate. But here's one. It's called chocolate with ambergris. Let's see if I can find that one. It's not that one. It's not that one. There it is. So what in the world could this be? So ambergris is an expensive whale spit up. Yeah, I did say spit up. It was something the 18th century men and women loved to have on their food for a decadent treat. The recipe was first developed in Europe in the 17th century, and soon cooks in colonial America were flavoring their chocolate with ambergris. The whaling industry was growing and demand for the spit was high. Nowadays, ambergris is an ingredient used in expensive perfumes. Ha ha! You may find it in fancy hot chocolates too if you know the right places. I think when we go on trips from this point on, if I want a hot chocolate, I'm going to ask them, do you have like whale spit up in it? That does seem pretty gross right there to me. So anyway, their food was a little bit different back in the day. So let's go on to the next one. So we've been talking about all the different products and things people ate back in the colonial days. And there are quite a few of them. And I'll go ahead and show you now. This one right here. Now that one right there, it looks kind of like a banana bread. And we talked about what that was earlier. And they did eat pigeons back in the day. Something that we kind of freak out about. And then this one right here, that was the lobster. Back then, lobster was not for the rich. Go to Red Lobster and see what you're going to buy. Or go to any fish food restaurant. You're going to be paying a whole lot of money for that. And then here was, it was a soup that they made out of weird things. They ate swan back in the day. That seems a little different too. and a number of pies that they would make back in the days. There were ales. They had ale for everything, just about it. An eel pie. There's the eel pie sitting right up there, kind of in the middle of all that stuff. Kind of different. And then we talked about the chocolate. Yeah, it's probably not going to be my thing either. They actually ate whales and stuff back then, and we'll get to that one in just a second. But did you know they ate beaver tail back in the day? Yeah, it was North America's huge beaver population had them hosting a booming fur trade. Yeah, they sold a lot of furs back in the day. And this was in the 17th and 18th century. All that beaver meat didn't go to waste, as they were also consumed. So beaver tail was fatty, and it was often roasted, making it a delicacy in colonial America. So one contemporary cookbook writer described the dish as essentially gaming tasting fat, no doubt. Yeah, that was kind of out there. Okay, so for this one right here, this one, let's see if I can find it. Oh, I don't see it. Okay, so they call this one calf's foot jelly. Okay, yeah, I didn't have the picture for that one. So it's calf's foot jelly. So calf's foot jelly was actually exactly what the name suggested is. So what happened is they used the gelatin and jellies, and they were popular back then. This dish was gelatin that emerges while boiling the hoof of a calf. So the Americans of the 18th century even believed the dish was good for the sick. I'll take your word on that. But do you know that is where gelatin actually comes from? Wow. So things were kind of different back in the day. Okay, we still got some time. So I have something else I wanted to share with you as well. Oh yeah, we got plenty of time. So this is something I found on this website. It's called shareably.com. And so it's the name of this one, or the headlining on this one, is 70 Neighbors You May Not Want Living Next Door. 70 neighbors you may not want living next door. Let's see how many of these that we can get into. I know what this one is. So this is a raccoon. No kidding. Now I kind of doubt that you'd want to live close to a raccoon. We've had plenty of them here. So choosing a place to live is a matter of getting a life of a relative peace and jumping into a cold war you never signed up for. Yeah, I've got some neighbors like that. Unfortunately for some realtors, they will never tell you that a house is haunted. They'll never tell you that it was a former crime scene. And they're just not going to tell you a few things about what's going on in the neighborhood. Okay, now that we've finished with weird foods the colonials ate, I wanted to talk to you about the story of Johnny Appleseed. We all heard about, at least in my generation, we heard about the story of Johnny Appleseed, and many people have thought, well, it's a legend, and it didn't really wasn't a Johnny Appleseed, but there really was a Johnny Appleseed. And there are some things that, how stories can get told over and over again, and they're not exactly as, truthful, because I'm going to give you the truth stuff about it, okay? So this is a website, and if you want to check it out, kids need to know about this, okay? WAAPPLE.org. WAAPPLE.org. It's like WashingtonApples.org. Okay, so this is just a real good legend, and a lot of this stuff was true, okay? So Johnny Appleseed's real name was John Chapman. He was born in Massachusetts in 1774, and his dream was to produce so many apples that no one would ever go hungry. This is the truth about it. Although legend paints a picture of Johnny as a dreamy wanderer planting apple seeds throughout the countryside, research reveals him to be a careful, organized businessman who, over a period of nearly 50 years, bought and sold tracts of land and developed thousands of productive apple trees. And by the way, if you're thinking about planting an apple tree, you need to find one that was originally brought here. His adventures began in 1792 when John was 18 years old. He and his 11-year-old half-brother, Nathaniel, headed west, following the steady stream of immigrants. Now, in his early 20s, John began traveling alone, which is how he spent the rest of his life. Nathaniel stayed behind to farm with her father, who also had immigrated west. Nathaniel, John, continued moving west towards Pennsylvania. Now, from there, he traveled into the Ohio Valley country and later Indiana. So he kept ahead of the settlement and each year planted apple seeds farther west. So he created numerous nurseries. This is like the original nursery owner right here, by carefully selecting the perfect planting spot. He always carried a leather bag filled with apple seeds, and he collected for free from cider mills. Legend says he was constantly planting them in open spaces in the forest, along with the roadways and by streams. However, research suggests he created numerous nurseries by carefully selecting the perfect planting spot, fencing it in with fallen trees and logs, bushes and vines, sowing the seeds and returning at regular intervals to repair a fence, tend to the ground, and sell the trees. He soon was known as the Appleseed Man, and later he became known only as Johnny Appleseed. So over the years, his frequent visits into the settlements were looked forward to, and no cabin door was ever closed to him. To the men and women, he was a news carrier. To the children, he was a friend. He was also very religious and preached to people along the way. And his favorite book was the Bible. So folklore has also described him as a funny looking because of the way he dressed. It said he traded apple trees for settlers' cast off clothing. So Johnny Appleseed is described as a man of medium height, had blue eyes, light brown hair, slender, kind of wiry, and alert. Folklore also described him as funny looking because of the way he dressed. It said that he traded apple trees for settlers casting off clothing. He was known to give the better clothing to people he felt needed it more than he was. This could be why the legend says he wore only coffee sacks with holes cut out for arms and clothing. He rarely wore shoes, even during the cold of winter. It's also said he would walk over the ice and snow barefoot, and that his skin was so thick on his feet that even a rattlesnake couldn't bite through it. Another legend says he wore a mush pot on his head as a hat. This is unlikely, since pots of the time were made of heavy copper or iron. But it is more likely he wore someone else's cast-off hat, or maybe made his own out of cardboard. He rarely sought shelter in a house, since he preferred to sleep on bare ground in the open forest with his feet on small fire. Now, in 1842, Johnny made his last trip back to Ohio after spending 50 years walking through the countryside. While there, he moved into the home of Nathaniel, his half-brother, with whom he began his remarkable journey. On March the 18th, 1845, he died of pneumonia at the age of 71. He was visiting his friend William North in Indiana. So legend says it was the only time he was sick in his whole life. There are various theories as to his final resting place, although there's a memorial stone in Fort Wayne, Indiana. The exact location of John Chapman's gravesite is unconfirmed. I hope you enjoyed that. My name is Donna. I'm your host of The Edge on IC Radio, your source for news and entertainment. You can also find us on television, channel 182 on Charter Communications, and Abundance Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Thank you so much for watching. And we're on regular time, 1 to 3, Monday through Friday. And always glad to see you there. You can also find us on podcasts, netnewsnetwork.net. You take care.